for downloading this episode of Cork Talk with me, Tim Atkin. A weekly conversation with some of the most famous people in the world of wine.
Felipe Mu's dad has never drunk alcohol, but that didn't stop his son studying viticulture and enology. After a formative spell working alongside Marcelo Retamal at De Martino, he moved to Viña Tabelí in the limestone-rich Limarí Valley in 2006, where he's built a reputation for making some of Chile's best reds, whites and fizzes. Among the leading winemakers in South America, Felipe knows his country's terroirs as well as anyone.
Hello, Felipe. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Tim. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure for me to be with you today.
Well, and many congratulations. You're my winemaker of the year in Chile. I mean, long overdue. I should have given it to you before. I'm sorry. What was I doing?
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. It's been a very special award and recognition. As I said, when you presented your annual report, it's always good to receive this kind of news. It's not usual, of course. So I think it's because of the wines. It's because of the many years I've been making wines in Chile. So I'm really happy and I really appreciate it a lot. Thank you very much for this recognition.
Yeah, I mean, you look so young. That's the point, you see. But you've been doing it a long time. We'll talk about that in a minute.
Yeah, thank you for the young thing. I'm 50 years old now, so I'm not so young. But I drink a lot of wine, so I keep quite okay. Huh?
It's preserving you, right?
Yeah, of course. Mm-hmm.
Let's start with your family name, because you're a Müller. Is Müller, is that a German name?
It's a German name. My great-grandfather came to Chile in the early 1905, 1910. He came to Chile. So even though Müller is a very common last name in Germany, we are a very small family. There's a big German colony, especially in the south of Chile, but he came directly from Hamburg. And then, he started family here in Chile. So that's my German side.
And the other side is East. Is that English, American, or what?
It's English. It's English. It's English. My other great-grandfather from my other side, he came to the north of Chile to work in the executive de salitreras, which was a natural fertilizer. It was a huge business for Chile. So he came and, he married a Chilean woman. And in the case of my father's part of the family, the German guy, he also married a Chilean. So I have a blend of German, English, Spanish, Chilean. I have to do my DNA test to see which is my real bloodline.
You should. Huh? Yeah. I did mine recently. It was really boring. I hope it would be something exciting, that it would be Argentinian, but it wasn't. It wasn't very exciting. It was all around England. It was.
But, you guys from England, it's, of course, you have mixtures, but more local. We have Chile and Argentina started as a country, and Brazil, all South America, with a huge immigration from Europe. So probably we're more kind of a mixture of Africans, Europeans, and so
it's more exotic.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, you were brought up Santiago. Was wine part of your life as a kid? Were your parents wine drinkers?
I have a very nice story because my father, he doesn't drink at all. Never. Not a beer, nor wine, not a whiskey. He told me that when he was a very young boy, almost 5-6 years old, he, after a party in his house, he drank some of the leftovers on the glasses, and he had a very bad time, so he couldn't go again back to drink. Not until now that he's 75. So it's quite interesting, quite funny. His friends makes jokes to him, saying, you have a son which is a winemaker and you don't drink anything. So sometimes when we have to celebrate, he drinks just a little bit. But my mom, she really liked it. So she introduced me into wine. Wine was, of course, always at home, but not at the position that is in my home, where it's more common to find a bottle of wine than a milk or juice. Wine in my house is everywhere. Cases with wines, glasses, and in the which is something I love from wine and gastronomy, is, spending the weekends with a nice table, enjoying with the family, with the kids, with the brothers. Everything is around wine and food in my house. So it's quite different. But I started because my mom, and I remember when I was quite young, but I'm not sure I can say this, but I was like 12, 13 years old. And my mom loved to do in the summertime, white wine with peaches and chirimoya and strawberries. And that was quite sweet. So I remember sipping more than I should have done, because I really loved it. And when I was finishing school, remember my friends started drinking beer, and I was the only one drinking wine. White wine, sweet wine, very entry-level quality, but wine was always for me something that gave me a lot of pleasure. So I like it since I was a little kid.
And you went to Católica, the Catholic University in Santiago. You studied winemaking or enology and viticulture. And you were a bit of a star pupil, weren't you? I mean, didn't you have this amazing result? I mean, am I wrong in saying you were a very good student?
To be honest with you, I wasn't a very good student. I entered the university. I got a scholarship for rugby. I was a member of the Chilean rugby team. So I was able to get in the Catholic University by a scholarship that gave me some extra points to enter university. Then I had to play rugby. I had to left my team, which is in my heart, which is the opponent of Catholic University rugby team. It's like the classic between the two biggest rivals. So I had to play for 3 years for them. And I got into university. And to be honest with you, I was a regular student, average. But okay. Because I before entering to university to study agronomy, I wanted to study aquaculture. I love scuba diving. I love being in the nature. So basically, and my father, when I told him that I wanted to study aquaculture, he said, "Where do you study that?" So I had to go really further south in Valdivia to the Austral University, or up north in La Serena to the North Catholic University. And he said, where my eyes can see you, I have to have control over you. I like a lot of party and going out. So I think he took a correct decision. And I entered agronomy because I love gardening with my mom. We always have some plantings of tomatoes, of some fruit trees, peaches. So that was my approach to agronomy. So I didn't got any big, farm or vineyard, anything. My father, he's a lawyer. Okay. My mom, she's an artist. So I didn't got any connection, but I always loved being out. I don't like being in an office. You have to get used to it, but my spirit, my pleasure is going and being in the vineyard and
being outdoors.
Exactly. Yeah. So I was a regular student, and then my first really big achievement, and my only, I think, was that in Chile, after you end your agronomy studies, you have the degree of agronomic engineer. Once you give your thesis and everything is done, if you want to be a kind of formal enologist, you have to do a test in the enologist school, where agronomists, they come from all the different universities that give the enology, the viticulture enology specialization. So it is one test a year, and the only thing they tell you is if you pass or not. That's it. So you get there with the people from Universidad de Chile, Universidad Católica, from the Universidad de Concepción, from people that did some masters and degrees. And I remember the year I took the test, there were some guys that were much older than me. And so I ended university, started working, which is something I'm sure we're going to talk about it later. And I did my test. And I remember I was working in De Martino those days. And Reta told me, "Hey, Felipe," which was my boss at that point. "Felipe, have you studied for the test?" The test was on Friday. This was a Monday. And I said, "Reta, at what time, You give me tons of work." So and he told me, okay, so you can skip Wednesday and Thursday, so you can study and give a good test, because if you fail it, what is going to be your face on Monday when you come back to the winery and you didn't pass the test of enologist? So I had a little bit of a pressure over there, over my shoulders. And I remember I was very surprised because I won. I had the best exam, and that was the only accolade they gave. It was the best exam of the generation. And I was so surprised because really, I was dreaming to pass it, but I had a very good school where I was working with. So for me, it was quite natural what I answered and what I put in the paper, in the exam. So I think more than the study was my very little experience in De Martino that gave me that extra.
With De Martino.
So that's my accolade in terms of students. Yeah. That's it.
Okay, of academics. I mean, you joined De Martino, I think, in 2001, and you've mentioned Marcelo Retamal. Amazing winemaker, amazing human being. I mean, he's a good friend of both of ours. Did he influence your thinking about winemaking? Was he a huge influence on you right from the start?
Yeah, I entered De Martino to make my thesis, and to make my professional practice that you have to make to go out of the university. And I remember my first interview with Marcelo. He said, what do you know? What do you know about wine? What do you know about the cellar, the winery? And I told him, I know nothing. I have all the knowledge of the theory, but in the practice, this is my first approach to a winery. He said, well, perfect, because I can teach you the way I want you to work with. Because of course he was receiving students from other universities, and that they have done different practices, not only in Chile, also in other parts of the world. So he said, I'm fine that your knowledge is zero, as you said. I don't know how to, do anything, because it was my first job at a winery, and so basically he formed me. I was very lucky. On those days, De Martino had a very, very good technical team. Marcelo was an established winemaker of De Martino, but we also have two wine consultants. One is Adriana Cerda. She's a lady that she has a huge knowledge. I think she's retired now, but she was very, very helpful. She gave the feminine way of thinking, tasting, the details, everything, and the wine consultant of the family on those days was Aurelio Montes. So,
great.
Aurelio was also very important for me, especially in his way of thinking. I think Aurelio formed me a lot in his way of thinking in terms of the business, in terms of the clarity he had in taking decisions, to get into important things and leave behind, the things that they're not so important and they take you a lot of time. And so Aurelio, very strong in commercially, in speaking about the wine, in selling the wine, in getting the information of the market. Then Adriana said that she was in the small details, fine tuning, and Reta, that of course he was.
So those three.
The three, but of course Reta was my biggest mentor by far in terms of winemaking.
Well, what interesting, because one of the things you did was you did this huge study, didn't you, of different valleys of Chile. You looked at over, I think, 350 vineyards. What did you learn, and were there any valleys that surprised you? I mean, maybe Limarí, where you made your name, really.
My biggest learning was that, at least in agronomy, in viticulture, you cannot follow recipes. We explored whole Chile on those days, and we had to buy grapes, and we had to visit the vineyards normally to get the contracts before the harvest, of course. And many times it was in winter, so no leaves, no bunches, no grapes to taste. So my huge learning was not to follow recipes, but how to interpret a vineyard just with standing in the vineyard and seeing the sun, the exposure, the orientations of the rows, the soil. With Marcelo in the Martino, we were probably the first ones to get really deep into the geology and the influence of soil and geology in the winemaking, which was something that in Europe was really, known centuries of years before. But Chile was in a very early stage in the beginning of the 2000s. So I remember, when we hired Pedro Parra, for example, he was talking about colluvial, alluvial, and schist and granite, and for us was something new. So that young is the industry in Chile in terms of fine
20 years
making.
old,
25 years old. So it's amazing. Yeah. So for me, the Martino was a great experience. In many ways, of course, it was my first job, but the learning of the vineyard, of the management, because we were advising the growers, we were buying the grapes, then vinifying those grapes, the expectation we have. And we, of course, we always made some mistakes, but we had a very fine tuning with Marcelo in terms of understanding the places and, having a very good accuracy in terms of what those places could give us in terms of wines. So that was a huge, huge knowledge and a huge advantage, because traveling around Chile gave you the big picture, at least for the country, and exploring new areas as Limery. That's how
you met Limery.
For me, it was very surprising.
We'll come back to Limery in a second. I just want to talk to you a little bit about traveling, because you've worked harvest in Bordeaux, and you've also visited Spain, Australia, California, other areas of France. Yeah, you travel a lot. So does Rita. Which place had the biggest impact on you? Any one place we think, I really start to understand something new about wine? Burgundy, maybe?
I remember we made a trip with Marcelo, which is something that is completely impossible to do now. We spent 1 month going around the most important appellations of France, visiting Bordeaux, visiting Burgundy, Champagne, the Côte-du-Rhône. And it was a trip that the purpose was understanding France geology and the impact of the soil in wines. So it was not only going to the most famous places, it was about looking and having some classes with the professors of geology of the University of Bordeaux in Cosses-Tournelle, for example, in a pit, looking at the different soils and then tasting the different wines coming from there. So, of course, we visited the big names, but I think that trip was very, opened my eyes and gave me the sense of the importance of terroir, but also the way the French viticulturists or vignerons, they live with wine. And for me, there is a big difference, for example, in what happens in Bordeaux, in the big castles and these big chateaus with very, old money or very traditional. But when you go to Burgundy, for example, you see the owner of the size is smaller. You see the owner pruning, fermenting, selling the wine. And for me, that was very surprising because the scale is more human. You see that the wife, I remember, going to Sancerre to Alphonse Melot, and I remember the mother of Alphonse, she was the wife of the owner, and she was cooking for the workers.
Yeah.
That is something that doesn't happen in Chile very frequently. So the connection to wine, the connection to their passion, the way of seeing wine, for me was very revealing. It was something that I really touched my heart. Sancerre, Burgundy, smaller scale, of course, the quality of the wines. My preference in terms of varieties is Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. So for me, Burgundy is my best place to be in the world. Huh?
Yeah. I thought you were going to say that. Listen, you said that you got to know the north a little bit when you were working at De Martino, and I think that's when you came across Limerí for the first time. Tell us a little bit about Limerí as a region, just about its climate, where it is in Chile in terms of Santiago and the rest of the country, and what makes Limerí special, because it's a very special region.
It's very special. Limerí is located in the north of Chile, around roughly 400 kilometers from Santiago, north from Santiago. It's a very special area in many ways. Technically speaking, Limerí is a pre-desertic area. It's a very dry area. We have an average of 80 millimeters of rain per year, which is very, very little. Nothing. Yeah. Almost two or three rains per year. Some years, as 2023, we had 16 millimeters during the winter, so that's nothing. So, from that perspective, it's quite interesting because climatically speaking, the 99% of the vineyards in Limerí are planted in the coastal area. Chile, near the coast, is a cool climate area. The Pacific Ocean breezes are very cold. You've been there, Tim, and you know that there's a huge influence. If you're around the coast of the ocean breezes, that they blow from the ocean into the continent during the day. So what happens there is that we have a cool climate, but very dry. Normally, cool and dry, they don't go together. Normally, cool is more associated to a little bit more rain, and dry climate to warmer climate. So in this case, this is a kind of a cool desert, which is good because it allows you to produce in a very good way white grapes as Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, in the reds, Pinot Noir, of course. But then, as it is a very dry season, very dry area, we can get a good maturity of reds of, I would say, middle cycle of maturity, like Merlot, like Syrah, like Malbec, and Cabernet Franc. Unfortunately, Limerí is not so magical, so Cabernet and Cabernet, at least in my experience, doesn't grow very well. It's too cold for those varietals. So you can get a 14 of alcohol, but you will never get fully ripeness of the phenolics of the tannins. So it's very green wines, which are not very good. But it's very special.
Tell us about the limestone.
Well, it's very special. That's a cool climate, dry. But the real secret it was underneath our feet, and it's a limestone that we have over there. We have different kind of limestones. In the beginning, it was in the coastal area, was an alluvial profile with a lot of calcium carbonate in the soil profile. Calcium carbonate, which is limestone that was brought from the upper part of the Andes by the rivers, and it was deposited in the lower part of the valley. So not all Limerí coast is like that. Of course, if you move from one place to another, you can have the limestone more near the surface or a little bit deeper down. So that makes a huge difference. But also, there is another type of limestone, which is what we have in Talinay, which is a old marine terrace limestone. Blended
from the ocean.
From the ocean.
From the ocean.
It was the bottom of the ocean from the Jurassic area. I think it's 150 to 200 million years ago. It was brought up into the surface, and we have this lovely, lovely pure limestone rock that is even more different than the other part of Limerí. So it's very uncommon soil to find in Chile. Even though we have such a long coast, all the coastal range is mainly granitic soil, which is very good for wine. But limestone is very special and gives you different aromatics, different flavors, and a different style of wines coming from Chile.
You have two vineyards, don't you, in Limerí, which are quite different. One is very coastal, which is Talinay. Tell us about the difference between the two of them, basically.
Well, we have three vineyards. We have Talinay, which is the more coastal one, which is 12 kilometers from the Pacific Ocean. It's the nearest vineyard to the ocean in all the north of Chile. And that is a vineyard that is planted over pure limestone soil. That is a vineyard, I always say that's a jewel of the crown. It's really amazing, the style you get from the quality of the grapes, the style of the wines. If Limerí is different from the rest of Chile, Talinay is different from Limerí. The structure of the wines, the minerality, the acidity levels and the balance of the wines is really huge. We have lovely natural acidities, never, ever had to adjust or correct any kind of it. The purity you get in the Sauvignon Blancs, the Chardonnays, and the Pinot Noir is really amazing. Those wines are not fruity, are more earthy. It's about the soil. You get the salinity also from the ocean. Is very interesting. It's a completely different style of wines. In the different varietals we produce Sauvignon Blanc, Chardonnay, Pinot Noir. We have lovely Malbec. Cabernet Franc is amazing. We also produce Tatier, which is a sparkling wine, which with grapes from that vineyard. So it's quite unique. It's very, 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 very special. And what I think is very valuable is that when you taste the wines from there, you get the essence of the place, which is something that might sound easy, but it's not that easy. The wines are different.
And what are the other two? What are the other two vineyards you said?
The other vineyard is Espinal, which is also a lovely vineyard, tailor-made with high density, with a very good clonal selection in different varietals, and that is alluvial soil, alluvial profile with calcium carbonate, which was the first discoverment in the beginning of Le Marie, that no one knew why the Chardonnays were so fresh and not with the typical tropical fruit or ripe fruit. This was more on the minerality, on the green pineapple, on the more citric side. Well, limestone gave that. And it's fantastic. And then the third vineyard is Rio Hurtado, where Roca Madre and Barranco comes from, which is
that's your third Le Marie vineyard in the Andes, yeah?
Yes. That's in the middle of the Andes at 1,600 meters above the sea level, in the middle of the mountains, and that is also a very special vineyard. Imagine that area is so dry, and in wintertime we have snow over there. It's a very steep hillside of volcanic decomposed rock in the place. And well, Malbec is fantastic. And we also have freshness over there because of the altitude. So it's very interesting. We explore the whole Le Marie Valley from the ocean up to the Andes, in the same company. So it's super nice as a winemaker to be able to have that kind of fruit.
And you also have vineyards outside Le Marie as well, don't you? Where are the other vineyards?
We own a fantastic vineyard in Maipo Valley. When we realized that Cabernet and Carmenère weren't at the level of the rest of the Le Marie Valley varietals, we took the decision of we had two options: or stop making Cabernet and Carmenère, which will limit the size of the winery, as whether we like it or not, in Chile and from Chile in the export markets, the most sold wines are Cabernet and Carmenère. So we took the decision of going and find the grapes where they better grow, maintaining and keeping the strategy of making terroir wines of very good quality. So we went to Maipo, and we were very lucky because we bought a vineyard in the coastal area of Maipo that I knew from its beginning when I was working at De Martino. The owner was getting old. He wanted to get out of the business. His sons, they didn't want to continue. So they put the property on sale. They called me, and after making the story, long story short, we bought it.
Yeah.
So we had a lovely vineyard in Maipo in a little bit fresher area. It is not cold, but it's much fresher than the normal Maipo. We picked the grapes. It's quite similar in terms of climate to Pirque, which is the coldest part of Maipo. Lovely south-facing slope with a fantastic, beautiful native forest behind, with colluvial soil, which is very good for Cabernet. So we had the opportunity and we bought it. I think that was probably one of the last really very high quality Cabernet Sauvignon vineyards that was not on the hands of the big players as Cochitoro, Santa Rita, of the big companies. Yeah. So we took the decision, and we've been developing and releasing different Cabernet Sauvignons from that vineyard, which is lovely.
No, it's an amazing vineyard. I've been there. I went there with you and with Hector Rojas. Hector is a very talented viticulturist. He's won my viticulturist of the year. You're good friends. I mean, do you think in the same way about wines? I mean, how do you interact the two? You seem like a very close team.
We were classmates in university. We were not very close friends, but of course we knew each other. And when I joined Tavali at the end of 2006, he joined Tavali a couple of months earlier, and we think very similar. We like the same style of wines, and we've been working to make the Tavali founders' dream come true. That was to try to make the best ones from Chile, but the most important thing was because of the quality of the wines, to put Limery on the map of the world viticulture areas of good quality.
Yeah, and you've done that.
We've been working.
No, but your grapes, you sell your grapes as well. Lots of people want to buy your grapes, don't they?
Yeah. So we love Pinot Noir, we love Chardonnays, we love Barolos. Of course, I like Bordeaux, but we share a very similar philosophy, which is not easy to have. Hector is a viticulturist that he really thinks about quality, about what of the viticulture managements are better for the quality of the wines and for the style we're seeking for. Many times you see a viticulturist in one side, and they're paid for their production, so irrigating a lot, and having high yields, and on the other side, the winemaker, yelling, and being pissed off with the viticulturist because he had too many kilos. And in this case, we're very aligned on the same way. We enjoy and we like the same quality wines, and we are very, very, very good team. We've been working 18 years together.
Wow, I didn't realize
and we get very well along.
Yeah, you've been very successful. One thing I wanted to ask you about was this joint venture with Champagne Tieno. You're making this very, very good sparkling wines now called Tatier. How did that come about? I mean, do you think Chilean sparkling wines are underrated? I do.
I think we had a very nice potential for sparkling wine. It started. It has always been in the offer in the Chilean market, but I think some companies took some leading in terms of bringing up a little bit the quality that made the category interesting and growing double digit for many years. The base was very small, but still was interesting. And when we bought the Taliné vineyard, because we didn't plant it, we bought it before making the wine. One of the things I told Guillermo Luxic, the founder of Tali, was that I thought that Taliné had a very good potential for sparkling wine because cool climate, limestone, Chardonnay and Pinot Noir. Well, I think it was very easy to understand that it could work. So after a couple of years later, he said, well, Felipe, what about the sparkling one? I said, well, we can start with the project. Okay, let's start. And I told him, well, the problem is that I don't have any experience in the winemaking of sparkling wine. It's very technical winemaking. I had a couple of classes in university, but my knowledge is I enjoy drinking it, but I don't know how to make it. And he told me, well, we can hire an advisor. And I told him, Guillermo, I think we need more than that. We need someone that, of course, can give us a technical direction, but also we need the commercial side. We have been making wine in Chile for 500 years, and still Chile struggles with its image.
Yeah.
We have very good wines, I think, but unfortunately, the industry has gone into the entry cheap prices, good quality for the price, but in the entry level. Imagine in sparkling wine that we have no history. 10 years is nothing. So I think we should merge or do a joint venture with someone that can give us winemaking techniques, but also the leverage of commercialization. Okay, what do you think? And I think the benchmark for this kind of wines is champagne. So I think we should approach small houses, family owned, not the big houses, owned by the big economical groups. So we can share a similar philosophy. So we can talk to the owners, owner to owner, and develop, a high-end sparkling wine from Chile. We knock a couple of doors, and Tino family, they were seeking at that moment to explore other places. They were looking at something in Tasmania, in Australia, in Oregon, in the US. And when they received our invitation, they were really surprised because they thought about Chile of only red wine. But, they searched about Tabali and they came to Chile. And when they went to Talinay, they couldn't believe what they had in front of their eyes. The limestone and the analysis of the grapes, the analysis of the wines. So we started making some trials with Chardonnay, Pinot Noir. And after 2.5 years from the first visit, doing vinifications and base wines, and then at an experimental level, second fermentations, they decided to do their international sparkling wine project, not from Australia, not from the US, which are by far biggest markets than Chile. They decided to go from Chile to the world
with you
because of more than, of course, with us, but they were so surprised about Talinay, about the quality, about how the base wines aged, because of course we blend different vintages. It was so similar to champagne that they were really surprised, and they said, we're going to do this from Chile.
Fantastic.
So that's how Tatia started. They came to Chile in 2013, and we launched Tatia it was supposed to be done in the end of 2019. We had a big riot here in Chile, so of course it was a big problem, political problem. So we said, okay, well, let's launch it in March 2020. And that's when COVID came. So it was quite tough in the beginning, and we decided to put it in the market. And it's been very successful. Wine. It's a fantastic wine. I think I told Guillermo, we had a complete page, completely free without any mistakes. Why don't we do it? Why don't we skip 30 years of trial and errors? So we did this joint venture where we owned 70% of the company, and the Tino family 30%. And it's been a great experience. They are super professional guys. We had a lovely relationship. They're into it, and this has been very, very interesting, because sparkling wine is in between spirits and wine in terms of commercialization, in terms of marketing, and it's such a traditional drink. I really love it, and for me, Tatia is very special because basically that was the one who gave the idea. It was a very good mood, and very good for Chile. This was the first time champagne house invest in Chile. It's very good for Limarí also. So it's adding value and giving new opportunities for Chardonnay, Pinot Noir,
and Pinot.
For Chile. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Listen, final question, and we've been chatting away very merrily here, is how do you get away from wine? I know you like surfing. You said, or you used to. Do you still like surfing?
I like scuba diving a lot. And I also like a lot of music. I used to be a reasonably good drummer. I enjoy music a lot. I will start now in a few weeks more having some singing lessons. So for me, music, rhythm, it's nice to take away, and also sports. For me, scuba diving, cycling. Now that I'm a little bit older, so rugby is in the past now. I go and look for my kids, playing rugby. It's a fantastic sport. I really love it. I watch it on TV. I went to the World Cup in France. It's amazing, the best ever. But injuries is a problem at this time of my life. And then outdoor sports for me, that's the oxygen, and
you get the same thing in the vineyard. Yeah,
exactly.
You get the saving in the vineyard.
Exactly. Walking in the vineyard in an afternoon or in the morning, in the autumn, or tasting the grapes, for me is my best time ever. My wife, she complains. She always say, you can go on your vacations, on your holidays to visit vineyards and wineries, and so I'm a very lucky guy. I work and I live from the thing I like most in my life, and that is something that is not common. And I'm a very lucky person that I can say this.
I think I could say the same thing too. We're both very lucky to work in wine. Anyway, exactly. Felipe, it's been brilliant talking to you. Many congratulations again on your prize. I love your wines, and I love what you and Hector have done together, basically, in Italian especially. They're brilliant. Great to talk to you and see you soon.
Thank you very much, Tim. And it's a pleasure for me always. Bye-bye.
Well, anyone who enjoys fine, cool climate wines will be happy that Felipe fell in love with Le Marie all those years ago. Next week on Cork Talk, my guest is Adriana Catena from El Enemigo in Argentina. Join me then.
Thanks for listening to Cork Talk. If you want to read more reports, articles and tasting notes by me, go to my website, timatkin.com. You can also follow me on Twitter @TimAtkin and on Instagram @TimAtkinMW. See you next week.